Your Higher Self. Quantum healing hypnosis therapy practitioner will be discussing the benefits of the technique he uses to help his clients channel their higher self. Channeling our higher self allows the flow of information in both physical and emotional healing. And to be honest with you, I'm actually looking so forward to this talk. I'm going to be sitting here too. So a huge round of applause for James, please.
Thank you very much. My name is James Kerouac, and I have a hypnosis practice, past life regression, and I call that James Kerouac's Conscious Connection. And so today I want to set some intentions. I have an intention that somebody that is going to listen to my story is going to be inspired to come up and tell their story at a later date, of course. And also I want to set the intention that somebody is going to become a holistic practitioner and move forward in that, as I've been doing myself in the last 6 years. So I want to tell you my story of how I came here today to be in front of you. And I'm excited and nervous. As you can see, this is my first time speaking in public, so I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be fun, and so please bear with me. I want to bring this full circle when we come to the end, and I hope you'll kind of stick with me, okay? So I want to start when I was a young boy. I went to church with my grandfather on several occasions, and I remember the preacher talking about Jesus and how Jesus was your friend, your companion, he loved you, he was caring and kind. He was up in the pew, he was beside you, and as a matter of fact, in my imagination, he left church with me that day. And I think he actually played with me for the following week, and shortly after that, I went back to church, and the preacher was talking about God's wrath. And I couldn't understand why the father of Jesus would have wrath and be judgmental and not understanding and not kind. And so it just left me asking religious, spiritual questions my whole life. And shortly after that experience, I had an experience where I was in the presence of a white light. This white light was the size of a golf ball, and it grew to about the size of a grapefruit. As it came at me and touched me, I woke up and I had a butterfly feeling through my whole body. Like, you know when you're in a car and you get that butterfly feeling? That's the best way I can describe it. And the window was open, the sky was blue, the birds were singing, and there was a nice cool breeze coming in the room. And it just seemed to be just a blissful moment. And it also had an era of deja vu, which I think gave it even more importance. It's like it had happened several times, but I was really conscious of it this particular time. And so that really, I think that let me know that what they had been saying about God wasn't true, that God did love you and was very caring, and he actually came forth and showed it to me in this experience. At least that's kind of what I think. And so shortly after that, my mom taught me that when you know where you're going, the world will move aside. And that was just an easy, simple concept for me to understand, is that I would just think what I wanted to experience next, and it would just come. I remember in kindergarten, I went skiing almost every weekend because we had a roommate at the time who, her and her boyfriend would go out skiing. And you have to understand that I lived with a single mom who had very little resources, but with the idea of when I decided what I wanted to do, the world would move aside, the resources would be there in some way or form. And so I got to go skiing, I got to do things that just boys or kids from single parent families don't get to do. And so that was kind of a cool thing for my mom to teach me that, and I carry on with that today. And so in grade 4, she taught me how to visualize. And so being a little boy, little boys want dirt bikes. So I wanted a dirt bike, so she showed me how to visualize. And I had a pamphlet that had a dirt bike in it. So I envisioned myself kicking up dirt and doing jumps and just having a good time with this dirt bike. And she told me that I had to really feel what it felt like to be experiencing being on that dirt bike. And so jump ahead 2 years, when I was in grade 6, my one uncle approached me and said, Jamie, I understand that you want a dirt bike, so how would you like to start a firewood business? And so every weekend we would go out and get firewood, we split it, we'd pile it in our customers' yards. And he would charge himself a case of beer every weekend, which I figured was fair, you know. And so halfway through the summer, he approached my other uncle who knew more about dirt bikes, and we went out and test drove a few dirt bikes. And then when the decision was made to actually purchase the bike, I wasn't there. And I never told anybody I'd visualized this bike, so when they actually surprised me with the bike, it was the exact same make and model that I had envisioned. The only thing was, it wasn't as new, it didn't have the disc brakes, it didn't have the air-cooled system, or the liquid-cooled system. And so, but it was the exact same make and model, and so that was pretty cool. But I remember I would ride along the highway and basically race the traffic. And I would hit this jump, and over time, I would lay the bike over until eventually I was doing a full tabletop. And I would get honks and waves, and I had more fun on this bike than I had even imagined when I was doing my visualization. So, you know, it was, for me, it was the feeling of this bike, even though it wasn't the exact same bike. It was the experience of being on a dirt bike that was really important. And so, I'd like to jump ahead to 2007 now, to where my life was going well. I had just gotten a new job, and in that job I'd actually moved into a new position, which was a little bit better. And I remember thinking, life can't get any better than this. Things are going well. And the universe says, yes, master. And so my life began to spiral downwards. I got into accidents. I was having issues with management, and just things weren't going well. And so I got, around that time, so around that time, The Secret came out. So I know you're probably all familiar with The Secret. Some of you are, some of you aren't. And if you're not, well, I can't tell you about it because it's a secret. But no, seriously, The Secret, I Googled Law of Attraction, and I was able to find Jerry and Esther Hicks. And if you don't know who Esther is, she channels Abraham. And so before that, I actually had set the intention that I wanted to find somebody who speaks to God. And so I found Esther, who channels Abraham, which in essence is channeling God. And so for me, it just was what I needed at the time when things were starting to spiral downwards. And it reminded me of what I knew when I was a kid, when I decided where I wanted to go, the road will move aside. And of course, I created this downward spiral. And so, so at that time, when I was younger, I listened to a tape by Ravine. I don't know, some of you might know him. And something resonated with me that I would do hypnosis when I got older and probably had lived life and would be of more service to people. And so I looked at getting into hypnosis. And at first I got into traditional hypnosis, dealing with quitting smoking, losing weight, that kind of thing. And I never actually completed the course because it didn't resonate with what I intended. I felt that it had a very scientific connotation to it, where it wouldn't deal with the core deep issues. It wouldn't be life transform. It wouldn't transform lives. And so I moved into past life regression. And what I found with the past life regression that I had done is that I was handing people a recording, and they were to go back and figure out the symbolism, the meaning, the parallels between what we were shown and this life. And for me, that just, it wasn't a complete closure. I wanted them to be able to have some answers in the session, not to go off and try and figure this self out on their own. And so, going back to when I had started listening to Esther and Abraham, I had actually turned my wife on to listen to this, and it resonated with us so much that we ended up going on 2 cruises with Abraham. Now, while we were on the first cruise, I met a lady from Cochrane and told her that I had been doing past life regression and that I wanted to start to do my own version of past life regression that I felt would help heal the person further and get answers. And so I went out and did the session with her, and when I was leaving, she handed me a book, and the book was called The Convoluted Universe, and it was by Dolores. And as I began to read this book, it was very much about ETs and aliens, and the information in there was just mind-blowing. It just seemed to be, how could it not be true? It just seemed to resonate with me. And so as I researched Dolores, I found that she was doing these healing sessions and that these books were actually a byproduct of the healing sessions. So I felt that if this information in these books could be this intriguing, I couldn't imagine what the sessions would actually be like. So I started to look at her website to see if I could take training from her. And I could, but if I'd have to go to Japan or Australia or Arkansas, there was nothing close to Calgary. And so I stopped following her site. And then the following spring, I was on Facebook, and the lady I had done the session with had a picture posted with her and Dolores. And so I messaged her and asked her, what was this about? She said, well, I went and got my level 1 in Edmonton, of all places. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And you didn't tell me that you were going to do this? And so she said, well, you can do it online. So I was like, oh, great. And I just happened to have a week's holidays coming up a month later. And so I made it work that I worked overtime so I'd have the funds so that when I had this week off, I'd be able to pay for the course and complete the course. And so that's kind of how I got involved with QHHT and did the course online. Now in this past March, I had the privilege to meet Dolores in person and do the level 2 and bring my hypnosis to another level. And unfortunately, Dolores passed away last month, and she will be missed, but we also have to celebrate her many achievements. She's written 17 books, 2 are still to come out. She's going to have 19 books. And I know she's got fragments of books already started too. But she's done so much to change humanity, and I just know that if you aren't aware of Dolores, please check into what she does. She is an amazing being, and she has done amazing things for humanity, and I'm so blessed to have met her. But when I look back on my life, I see that my higher self has always been there guiding me to where I'm here today, standing in front of you. And so when I look back at the 2007 downward spiral, I would like for you to play with me here, okay? So I would like you to get your finger going in a clockwise motion. Okay, make it big circles and bring it down slowly. And then bring it down so that you're looking over it. Now I want you to notice the direction it's going in. It's going in a counterclockwise direction. So when I look back on what I called my downward spiral, it really brought me into things that got me into this hypnosis, to do the sessions that I've been doing. And it's come full circle so that when I look back at it, it's from the perspective of it a downward spiral. I don't think so. I think it's actually elevated my life and changed it for the better. And so when you look back at your downward spirals, what are you going to make of them? Are you going to turn them around? So I just, I also, about 15, 16 years ago, wrote down what my criteria or preferences that my dream job would have. And I wrote down that I wanted to be of service to others, I wanted to work a 4-day work week, and I wanted to be famous. Why not? And so I actually work full-time right now as a garbage man. So let's do the math on that. I work a 4-day work week, I'm of service to others, and I'm famous. I could walk into a grocery store or a shopping mall in certain areas and somebody could be, hey, there's my garbage man. And so I've added something to that, and that is I want to help others help themselves. And that has moved me into the hypnosis in the past 6 years. And so that's where I'm at now. I'm making that transition from being a garbage man to being a hypnotherapist. So when I look back on when I manifested that motorcycle, the process that I used is I would look at the pamphlet, and that was the visualizing of it, the praying or the asking. And then what I would actually do is I would close that pamphlet up, set it aside, and I had a guided meditation tape, not a CD, this is going back quite a few years. And I would listen to this tape, and the tape was just a guided relaxation tape. Nothing that nobody else can have. And that was the allowing. That was just, I wouldn't focus on the bike, I wouldn't focus on riding, I would just focus on feeling good. And I really truly believe that feeling good is the most important thing that we can ever do in our lives. And now when I look back on feeling good, and I go back to that moment where I was in the presence of that white light, that was a reminder of what we're here to feel here and now. And it's our job to feel good. We can't expect somebody else to make us feel good and joyful and blissful. That is our job. And we need to make steps and intention to go there. And I get so much out of my sessions that it's like having that moment over again in my sessions sometimes. Not all the time. Some are harder than others. And so, with that being said, is there any questions? Oh, sorry, I didn't complete that. So there's the meditation side of it was the receiving or the allowing, right? So it kind of went full circle. So if you imagine over here, we're taught to pray, we're taught to ask, and if we're worthy, we'll receive. At least that's what I was taught when I went to church, going back 35 years ago. And in the East, they're taught to meditate, which is the allowing. But they tend to not ask questions. So when you take the two together, you have the whole, you have like a contemplation, you have the asking and the receiving. And that's what I really feel what I do is in my quantum healing hypnosis is that my clients bring their questions and I answer. So I don't answer their question, I ask their questions on their behalf, and they become a conduit of the information that answers it. And also it can cause physical healing as well. And so that's kind of what QHHT is in a nutshell. It has a side of asking and a side of receiving. And that's basically what the sessions kind of do. So is there any questions? Sessions tend to last about 5 hours. There is no set time. I just charge a fixed rate because I don't want people to be worried about time. I want them to be a relaxed session, not rushed. It starts off with a conversation, very much like this, only I'm listening, and other people, the client's talking. And we start off with their childhood. I always start with the childhood because I really believe our first 5 to 6 years we get imprinted with our beliefs. We're a product of our environment until we know we're a product of our environment. Then we have the ability to move beyond our environment. But in the beginning, we were very much a product of our environment until we're conscious of it. And so we have the conversation, then I do an induction, and that will last 2 hours, and that's the actual past life side of it, and the higher self side of it as well. And I record that whole set part of it, and that recording is given back to the client, and then they can go back and have their aha moments. So. Anything else? Do they have follow-up questions? I like to get focused on the first session because I want them to have as much as they can from the first session. But that is definitely a possibility. Thank you.
So I'm just wondering if you could maybe explain to everybody a little bit more about what happens in the past life through the hypnotherapy. Because people heard earlier about past lives through an intuitive, right? Which is so much different than past lives through hypnotherapy. So I'm wondering if you can help with that.
I missed that, but my sessions, I don't like to set intention, but the higher self really guides the session. I don't take it anywhere. I ask open-ended questions. Tell me more. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? How's that feel? I don't give them an A or B question because that would be leading. And so we don't go, everybody wants to know what was my previous past life. Well, if it's important, the higher self will take us there. So I don't guide the session in any way. I'm only the facilitator of it, and the higher self really guides us. And I just ask open-ended questions, and it guides us. So I hope that answers your question. There's really no past life per se. Sometimes it's symbolisms. We can bounce from life to life to life to just see one scene. Now, myself as a practitioner, I can't tell you what those mean. You were showed that you were an Indian because you're moving back into nature. I wouldn't have got that, right? So that's one of the ones that's come out. Any other questions? Well, I'd like to share a message then that I've gotten in a couple past recent sessions. I did a session this past summer with a gentleman who was in another industry and was wanting to move into the healing field. And in closing, I asked the higher self, is there anything you'd like to share with us before we let you go? And it stated that yes, when he is in a healing session and he's focusing on the love in his heart, he is to understand that the healing comes from the heart of the universe, so to speak. And that just resonated with me, because I don't truly believe that there's any healers out there. Even John of God, I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but he says that he's not doing the healing. He's only the conduit of the healing. The energy is separate from him. Even though it's coming through him, it's not him. And so I really resonate with that, and I really, really believe that that's true. Yes. So your question is that past life, physical problems. What I've found is that this is not always the case, but usually how we die can affect this life. So yes, it can affect this life. I'm sorry, I don't clear that. The higher self clears that, yes. But we would ask on behalf of that. So we wouldn't necessarily have to go to that life. We could just ask if, people when they come, they tend to know what's bothering them. So we would ask specifically about that physical issue. And we would ask for the higher self to do some healing on it. Any other questions? Yes? Pardon? Is there any advertising? Why is it called quantum hypnosis? Well, I really truly don't know the answer to that. Dolores used to call it Dolores' healing technique. Then I think about 6 years ago, it got the name quantum healing hypnosis. And so it's just a name. It's still Dolores' technique. I still do it exactly how I was taught to do it. So yeah, I don't know, I think everybody resonates with quantum healing these days, and the idea that we can have big changes. And so I really don't know the answer to why it's called quantum healing. So thank you. Anybody else? Well, if you'd like to learn more about connecting with your higher self, you can always go over to my website, www.jameskirouac.com. Kerouac spelled K-I-R-O-U-A-C. Or you can come by and see me at my booth. I'm at the very end. Yeah, before I go, I'd just like to remind you to dream big, because you too can become a garbage man. And so I just want you to remember that when you know where you're going, the world will move aside. And that's just, I love that. I love you all. Namaste.